Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought I'd do a bit of an off-the-cuff video when it comes to talking about Thunderskill. Now, we've talked about Thunderskill in the past in smaller ways about how it's completely useless to actually analyze any set of data when it comes to War Thunder, and why using it is a sign of ignorance instead of a sign of competence. In this video, I'll basically go through a few reasons why, but more in a casual way. If you really want a proper breakdown about how completely useless this service is when it comes to giving you a general idea of what's going on in the game, we can do that. It's just going to take a little bit to do, obviously, the required research to go through it all. But anyway, hopefully you enjoy this video. As always, if you do, make sure to subscribe to the channel and also like the video. So one of the interesting phenomenons that we've talked about for many years when it comes to War Thunder is what I class as the January blues. It doesn't only happen in January, it also happens in May. And basically it's a time period of 2 to 3 weeks where there's not too much going on in War Thunder, and instead of people like going to play other things or trying different things, for some reason, if with a certain like percentage of the player base, they don't have something to focus their minds when it's like an event or whether it's an update or something, they go heavily negative and they go heavily critical. You may have seen it over the last few weeks where a lot of people are talking about more about Russian bias, because of course they have, obviously the spalling issues at top tier, but only with Russian vehicles, even though they literally happen with everything else. The ammo rack explosion stuff as well, which we've talked about, and the issues around that, and then also many other different issues in the game. And these get amplified during these periods of times because there is a set of people who are too invested in War Thunder and don't have anything else going on in their lives. So what ends up happening is if they do not have their minds focused on something which is happening and instead are just focusing on their own reality, they get very depressed. And because they don't want to fix their lives and because they don't want to improve themselves, instead what they do is start going after video games, because that's an easy it's an easy shot, basically. It's a lot easier to blame other things than yourself when it comes to your life condition, and I've seen it multiple times when it comes to War Thunder that a lot of the most heavily critical people of it have very messed up personal lives, which they would be much better off fixing instead of dealing with video games. So, now let's talk about one of the things that has been happening over the last few weeks and always gets brought up during these times. And it's, of course, these absolutely ludicrous heat maps. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, there is a site out there, wt.controlnet.space. I'll leave a link in the description to it. And basically what it does is it shows you heat maps of all of the different win rates when it comes to War Thunder, of all the different areas. So it does ground vehicles and aviation. And it's like, that's interesting, you know? So you can get to see them, and everyone's like, oh, look at the different win rates and everything. Isn't that really cool? But there's a problem with this. The BR heat maps are completely worthless. They don't tell you anything to do with what the actual reality of the game is. And now we're going to go through why. So if you ever see these battle racing heat maps or these win rate heat maps, toss them out, because the statistical basis that these things use is Thunderskill. Now, why is this bad? Well, first of all, if you have even a tertiary understanding of statistics, you may have noticed something really weird if you've ever had a look at these heat maps. You'll be looking at it and you'll realize, especially on the aviation one, that the colors have been painted in a specific way to make your eyes believe that you are not looking at something in the correct way. So, first of all, 50% on the aviation win rate heat map is pretty much red/pink, okay? Now, usually, red/pink is used for something which is very low or very negative, so around about 0 to 20%. But here, it's used at 50%. And the reason for this is if you actually start scrolling over a bunch of these, you'll realize that pretty much every single BR, apart from for some reason Italy, lol, at the higher tiers of the game, are at 50 plus win rates, and not just 50%, but 53, 54, 55, even 60 in certain areas, such as France at 10-0 to 11-0 being 65% win rate, right? So the vast majority of them are at above or positive 50%. Now, you can believe one of two things. This must mean that everybody is beating up on Italy and Israel, right? So Italy and Israel are somehow losing more games than they are winning, but everybody else has a positive win rate against each other. But as you'll know, there isn't a ton of people playing Israel, and there isn't a ton of people playing Italy at the high tiers compared to other nations. So the matchups don't happen like that, if you even play it just for a little bit. So you might be wondering, how the hell, if you are matching up against each other, how the hell does everybody have a positive win rate? Because just by the law of averages, okay, if you have 12 people on one side and 12 people on the other side, one team has to win and one team has to lose, or there's a draw where both teams lose, right? So just looking at that there specifically, that would mean that the average win rate that you are dealing with in a game, if you averaged everything out, would be 49.9%. Because either one side has to win, or the other side has to win, or both sides draw, therefore both sides lose. So the only way that you could have a win rate which was above 50% is if teams were incredibly imbalanced. So you had, let's say, 12 players on one side and 10 players on another, or 14 players on one side and 8 players on another. Now, if you've played War Thunder, this does sometimes happen. Sometimes you do have 1 or 2 people who are either side when it comes to the scoreboards. But this is not a common occurrence, and it's not happening every time. And also, there are many instances where one team will have more players than the other and still lose. So that is like kind of more of a statistical anomaly compared to the rest of it. So in order for, let's say, an average win rate of something like 56% to be real, you would have to have very big weighted teams on one side compared to the other, which, as we can tell, is just not happening. So you're going to ask, well, okay, so how the hell do we have a situation where everybody has a positive win rate? Well, it's because it's based off a biased sample case. Now, what is BR Heatmap based off of? As we said, it's based off Thunderskill. Now, if you don't know what Thunderskill is, it is a website which is very much out of date nowadays. If you go to its dashboard, its new streams and new videos have not been updated in 2 years. 2 years, which shows how long it's been compared to, you know, what... I have no idea what that was, but I'm just going to leave it in because someone probably just broke. So there you go. Can't be bothered. Anyway, so going back to it, when it comes to the dashboard of Thunderskill, it hasn't been updated in 2 years. None of it has been updated, and that kind of shows you the state of the site at the point that it's in. If you have a look at a bunch of the other areas of the site, you realize that it is massively out of date. Sweden doesn't exist in it. China doesn't also exist in it. The only nations which are labeled are Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, USA, and USSR. No other nation exists. Now, you can actually get those vehicle statistics of those specific nations, but they are not labeled under their actual nations. So, for example, you have one which is the ETB TU4. The TU4 is labeled an American vehicle. So you can see a bit of a problem here when it comes down to it. Also, at the same time, when it comes to tracking certain stats, such as helicopters, it just doesn't. And then also, it doesn't actually track naval either. So it is completely worthless in those two setups. So for high tier ground, you know, where helicopters are used quite a lot, these stats are worthless already just because of that fact. If you have a look at other parts, such as the statistics page on the website, what you will find is the general win rates. It gives you the averages. So here we go. What is the average win rate of somebody in arcade and realistic battles? These are the two modes that I play the most. Now, remember what we said like 5 minutes ago about how averages have to work when it comes to the game. They have to work like this. Every other game works like this, and it only just makes sense for it to work like this. The average arcade battle win rate on Thunderskill is 55.68%. Do you see how ridiculous this is? The average win rate on realistic battles is 53.82%. So just approximately 4% higher than what the average could be. Or should be, let's say. The arcade battle one is about, 5.5% higher than what an average would make sense to be. So, where do these stats come from? You may be asking. Because it's like, oh, well, if Thunderskill tracks all players, and then if it tracks all players' stats, then maybe there's a fault in the system. Maybe more people do win than lose. Or maybe these stats are just true for some reason. No, because it doesn't track everybody's. The only people that Thunderskill tracks is people who are implemented in it, or people who are actually recorded on it. So the way that it works, right? So if I have a look at my account, which is European Canadian, right? That is the name of the account that I've used for many years now. You have to update your statistics when it comes to the thing, and then now your stats are in the Thunderskill system. So mine gets updated pretty regularly because people click on my thing and then they have a look at it, right? And a lot of people, to check their own stats, do the same thing. They update their stats to have a look at how their win rate's doing and also how their KD's doing and all of these different things. So that is, something that goes on. But this means in order for you to be part of the sample size of Thunderskill, either you need to update your own statistics or somebody that you know needs to update your statistics too. And one thing, or maybe two things, that you may have thought about at this point is the simple fact that some people, or there are like two sets of people when it comes to this stuff. The first one is people, there's basically three. New players are not going to know about Thunderskill, right? So all of those stats are going to be thrown out the window. Everybody who has like 45 to 50% win rate, generally they're not going to look at Thunderskill because they're not going to be that interested in it, or they're just not going to know about it. Then you have the stat padders, people who are really focused on their win rate, really focused on their KDs, really focused on being high on the leaderboards when it comes to things. They are going to constantly check their Thunderskill to see how good they are, to see what's going on. And then you have the third group of people who are the worst, which is they want to try and find out, using the statistics, general themes when it comes to War Thunder and what to play next, what to play in the meta, and all of that. So those three sets of people, the first one are not involved in these, the second ones are heavily involved in these, and the third ones are also heavily involved in this in different reasons. So the difference between these two is the second two are very experienced players, where the first one is obviously not. So what you have on Thunderskill is not a good actual look into what the average player is doing. It's actually a look at a high percentile set of players and what they're doing on it. Nobody who is crap looks at their stats on Thunderskill, and nobody who generally is not doing great or is new to the game is even going to know about Thunderskill. So you have this whole situation where you have a ton of people who are using the system who are high echelon players or high percentage players who are now skewing the beliefs when it comes to specific areas of the game, and therefore they can profit off it, whether it comes to win rate or whether it comes to ego or whether it comes to whatever it is. So the stat base of Thunderskill is screwed. It doesn't work. And the major problem, with all of this is if people start believing that this is reality. Because if this is reality, then you start getting ideas about people saying stuff like, oh, well, you know, if the average win rate is 55%, then the economic changes they made last year obviously are going to benefit less people. Yeah, that would be true if the average was 55%, which is literally impossible. But yeah, so there is stuff like that generally as well. There is also a bunch of other things to note about extrapolation, because this is a point which I've seen brought up a lot when it comes to this stuff. Like, what will happen is people go, well, this is a percentage of the data. So if we can just take this percentage of the data and then we can extrapolate it and then we can have a look at the general trends, maybe that'll give us a good idea of, you know, what is being played and also how good it is and all of that. No, because you don't know the statistical base of the data. Imagine in a political poll, you have, let's say, 20 people on the left, 20 people on the right, and then 20 people in the center. And what you decide to do is you decide to ask 5 of them questions. And you are told that these 5 people are randomly chosen. So you would think in your brain, okay, that's 2 left, 2 right, and 1 in the center. Imagine if instead it was all 5 people on the right. So you are going to get a very biased set of results from that. But you are going to believe that it is actually a balanced set of views because you've been told the actual spread of the people, right? So that's the same thing when it comes to Thunderskill. If you have a bunch of players who are in a specific percentile of the game, and you extrapolate from that, it is going to make everything else completely worthless because you are using not an average, or you're not using a standard point. You are using a point which, first of all, you don't know where it is compared to the rest of the player base, and second of all, even if you do know where it is, you don't know how many people are there, and you don't know how many other players are in other echelons of the game, because we don't know how many people are actually playing War Thunder on a daily basis. I have general numbers on how many are playing, but obviously not definite ones, and also at the same time would not want to put my name to those numbers, because I was told them not really a long time ago, but a decent while ago. And also, at the same time, you don't know how many battles are going on, and on top of this, you don't know what changes happen over days when specific people play, and also when specific time zones play. There is a ton of different data points on this which are not taken into account, e.g. variables, which are just not taken into account. So if you're looking at these heat maps, or if you're looking at somebody who is telling you, we need to do something about X nation, the win rate is too high, just say to them, where are you getting that from? And then there is only one place they can get it from, which is Thunderskill, or these heat maps, and both of them are completely useless. Unfortunately, when it comes to War Thunder, we do not have the numbers for win rates for vehicles. We do not have the numbers for how well vehicles are doing. We don't have any of that stuff. This isn't like World of Tanks where it's much more open, or other games where it's much more open. War Thunder is very much closed off on that point, and, you know, Gaijin have said in the past why that is the case. And I generally agree with them, even though it is frustrating from a player's point of view. But just to say, when it comes to this stuff, please understand that faulty data sets are way more damaging than no data sets at all. And that is what Thunderskill is, and that is unfortunately what goes on with it. As always, though, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank Forge, Siegebreak, Carrion Crow, Nicholas Richardson, Elove Goat, Pyman, Winter Scientist, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, and also Sem Arslan, Wilkski, Uncle Bean, Derek R., Bareen, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.